Visiones Sonores on Management and Representation of the Live Arts in the Digital World, August 9th, 2021. My name is Barbara Scales. I was born in the United States. I grew up in New York City and had exposure to a great education and an enormous range of artistic activity, from folk and jazz clubs to contemporary and classical theater, modern dance and classical ballet and classical chamber music and orchestral music. I went to Hollywood films, but also to international films and art film houses. I also had regular access, sometimes weekly visits to the great museums of New York City. All of this exposure to great art led me to try to understand the art I was seeing, not just my enjoyment, which might vary based on other factors like how much sleep I had had. I might be excited about something else which stimulated my attention to the artwork. I tried to understand what was in the work of art itself, which brought meaning, intention, something from the creative force or the collaborators which gave rise to the work. I read books about art history, biographies of composers and playwrights. I studied music and dance and theater, and eventually taught dance and theater. But I also studied philosophy and did a master's degree on aesthetics, exploring the question, what does it mean to say that art belongs to its time? The idea was in the air. The great Nina Simone was insisting in the 1960s that art must be part of its time.
An artist's duty, as far as I'm concerned, is to reflect the times. How can you be an artist and not reflect the times?
I wanted to understand the relationship between art and time, art and history. After my master's degree, I understood that the academy was not for me, and I chose to be part of the art of my time. I had little background in business other than work in a small bookstore. For me, the motivation to work in the arts grew from my conviction that engagement with art through practice, attendance, or viewing, and through conversation would strengthen positive qualities in individuals and make for stronger bonds in communities and in society. I was born a globalist. I imagined threads of understanding transcending language and cultural differences, connecting people across the globe through art. I was a woman with a mission and a love of human creativity. Artists asked me to help them book engagements, book tours. I said, sure, I would love to share my love of what they do with others. But how do you do that? I learned through trial and error with a little help from resources of data collecting organizations like Musical America or membership organizations and conferences. And after about 5 years, I felt that I was getting a pretty good idea of how to do this and what the cycle of the planting of proposals and the harvesting of engagements worked, and how to best provide support for the artists on the road and to the presenter to encourage their audiences to show up and to best appreciate what they were seeing. Connecting the artist to the audience. If the agent manager's job is to connect the artist to the audience, what we learn is that the path includes many deviations and many obstacles. It also includes many clues and helpers. Connecting. We must begin with the art and the artists. Who are they? What have they done? What have they made? How do we see the work, and how can we shape the perception of the work for others? To do, see the work, talk to the artist, identify and put into words the impact of the work for you and for a larger community. Where should it be seen? Is it for younger people, academics, special interest groups? What is the market? Preparation. The artist with the manager needs to have a program, perhaps a name for the program. There should be a description, perhaps audio or preferably video as a teaser or trailer for interesting the presenters and for the presenter to interest their audience. Some of these elements can be adapted or transformed into program notes when the work is presented. The manager needs to prepare a proposal. The artist, the program or choice of program. The plan must include dates, availability in a given market. How do you decide to approach a particular market? Are you planning a tour in Europe in a specific time period? Is there an anchor date to which you want to add other dates? How much flexibility do you have? Can you prepare an adaptable budget for the engagement? Travel, hotel, artist fees, agency commission, publicity. Don't let the event happen without making waves, even if they are only little ripples. Obstacles. One obstacle is the seeming barriers to simple communication. How do you deliver your message? The presenters seem to have a wall around them, and how do you get through? This is a perennial challenge. Don't be discouraged, be smart and thoughtful. Have a plan and be persistent. Use the right materials to reach the presenters whom you want to interest. First, try to find the right match between artist and presenter. Don't bring a folk dance company to a chamber music series. Also, bringing a piano soloist to a theater festival. Avoid bringing a piano soloist to a theater festival. Don't make the mistake of missing the target completely. It will be even more difficult the next time you knock on the door. Persistence means finding something new to say each time you approach. Bring fresh news or a different video or a comment on the context of the creation. If you can, plan a meeting in person at a conference or plan a visit to the venue. It will allow you to better grasp the character of the venue, the audience, the community. Another obstacle may be cost. How do you get around the fact that the market can only bear a fee of $5,000, but your costs are $8,000 per performance for a minimum tour of 5 engagements? Then add housing with single rooms to those costs. Are there solutions? Solutions may come in a variety of forms. You can try to find a variety of revenue sources which can reduce the price you need to ask of the presenter for each presentation. Private donors, crowdfunding, corporate sponsorship, or government funding may be ready to help with travel, cargo, housing, or overall costs. There need to be compelling reasons for people to support your engagements, and you will need convincing materials and even possibly benefits for the party contributing. The presenter also may be able to find special funding from sponsors, donors, or government sources. It may be possible to promote merchandise sales in person or online. This revenue can help to support the tour costs. Perhaps there are ways to reduce the costs. The rights holders and the performers may agree to a weekly or a bulk fee for the tour rather than a per performance fee. Some artists and ensembles like to be billeted in large homes where they can have individual rooms. Some presenters may have access to board members or community members who can provide this service. This can allow for deeper connections to the audience members, as well as distinctive and memorable moments for the artist on tour and for the audience welcoming them. Some clues may come from watching what colleagues are doing, where similar artists are performing. Some may come from reading news about the arts in online newsletters from organizations serving the arts or the specific art form you are promoting. Many clues will come from conversation with colleagues. It is always good to keep eyes and ears open and to keep a notepad or digital note file handy. Helpers may include some or all of the following. Publicists who can reach out to media both while trying to make that initial sale or to support the presenter in selling tickets to the public, and then to create the ripples or bigger waves after the performance. Local, regional, national, and genre-specific media, radio, television, print, blogs, specialty journals, etc. These are remarkably helpful. The attention they bring comes from individuals or platforms which have their own credibility. Their observation and recommendation can be a game changer in bringing an artist successfully to a wider public. During the 20th century, audio recording was the primary connector between an artist and an audience. This is clearly not appropriate for visual art forms like dance, painting, and sculpture, but very supportive for poetry, literature, theater, and especially for music. Digital pivot. With the arrival of the pandemic in March 2020, the whole cultural world, artists, managers, presenters, festivals, and audience members, was doing the digital pivot. The motivation was to keep on connecting artists to audience. Some people felt that it was a cheap imitation of the live event, while others found collaboration with videographers allowed the audience to have an enhanced experience of the live experience, with close-ups and other insightful imagery, bringing attention to details as an interpretive art in itself. The videos of local and regional presentations allowed some people who would not otherwise have the means or the proximity or even the freedom to access that live performance in situ to share the experience and to benefit from it. Hybrid performance of live in-hall events with online streaming became a way of reaching even more audience members, building a relevance and meaning in the presenter's relationship to its community, and eventually driving more traffic to an artist's website or social media pages. The way this streaming was shared was often determined with many considerations taken into account. In some cases, presenters offered streaming for free, perhaps to remain a good faith provider to the community. With no revenues, this also meant that contracts for sharing revenues with rights holders would not be required. Sometimes presenters or specialized platforms would share material by subscription or ticketed as pay-per-view or paid access for a limited time or limited number of views. These would require a ticketing system and agreements with right holders for a flat fee or royalty distribution based on revenues, or perhaps both. The presence of this coronavirus and its variants will likely diminish sufficiently to allow us to think of live performance in our halls as a reliable and perhaps sustainable undertaking. But we have learned a great deal as we have adapted to this crisis. It is for us to take advantage of what we have learned during these past 20 months. We are at the confluence of technological changes, social and cultural shifts, and while we may not embrace it all, it would be foolish to ignore it. We have the technical capacity to capture events live on stage and produced in studio with subsequent editing at much less cost than in the past. The cameras, switchers, and sound equipment are available more economically to skilled artisans and artists in videography and recording than in the past. The technical ability to increase bandwidth worldwide exists, although it may need governments to commit to making it more widely available. Decisions about what travels over those wireless networks are restricted in many places for a variety of reasons. More openness and less control in some places would allow more art to circulate in digital formats around the globe. Perhaps there could be specialty arts channels accessible globally. Households around the world are able to collect programming from an enormous array of feeds through the ever higher speeds of the internet. In multiple rooms of many homes, you will find devices from large screens and high-fidelity sound to computer screens, smartphones, and tablets, which can transmit these digital events or productions. In fact, it is not just homes, but also cars, buses, schools, hospitals, cultural centers, and prisons, which could have access to this content. It can be shared in ways which are convenient to those who will not or cannot travel, or who want to absorb it in small portions as their lifestyle or their schedules might allow. For some, the allure is YouTube with free random opportunities, or TikTok with a surprise of some sort every 60 seconds. For others, it is a 40 or 60-minute film of a performance. For others, it is the 30-minute documentary or commentary on the art, or the conversation between the filmmaker and the performer, or the choreographer and the dancer. Accelerando.media. So how has the digital pivot changed our world of performance? And as we go back to more access to live performances, should we care about the digital pivot? Should we be paying attention? The easy answer is yes, we should pay attention. Many of us had to learn a lot about the digital universe in a very short period. We had to consider how and why to produce, how to negotiate, which platforms to use to present, to distribute, to share the video capture of performance, or the full-scale production of a film presenting the art. There is already, from this era of pandemic lockdowns, new material produced from live performance and in studio with extensive post-production, which will have interest for audiences in the future. There is also a new art form emerging, the art of filming live performance and creating a new work of art. With that art form, there are additional benefits. New pathways are being created between the artist and the audience. However, there are also new questions for artists, presenters, and the agents and managers who make the connections. In the early months of 2021, with my colleague Kees van Dranen, we prepared a survey of topics facing the makers, distributors, and consumers of this new art form. Over several weeks, we met in small groups with about 25 people presenting arts and presenting professionals. Most of them found themselves suddenly confronted with only one option for continuing their commitment to bringing the work of performing artists to audiences: the use of digital technologies. The questions they asked were important, and many were widely shared. They fell into a few categories, including the art of the video, financing a video, marketing, rights, touring. Should I try to have hybrid streaming of live performance? Should I spend the time and money to make a fully produced film work? How do we pay for the production? What do we need to consider in payments, including rights and royalties for performers and rights holders? How are these different than those for live performance? What are the possible platforms for presenting the videos? As a presenter or producer, should I charge viewers? How do I do that? What impact does the decision to charge have on rights payments? How do we collect payments for viewers? What are the best strategies for video presentation and production? Is the use we make of the video for visibility or monetization? We gathered experts and prepared video capsules to answer some of these questions. None of these capsules will make you an expert, but they can provide some basics in the business of digital literacy. I hope that our website, accelerando.media, will help to define the issues which we need to master in order to work in the new context. We need some new points on our collective professional compass as we journey in this new world. How is it new, you may ask? Weren't there films of performance before? Yes, there were films before. I grew up attending the young people's concerts of Leonard Bernstein, and when I couldn't attend in person, I was able to watch them on television, where they were broadcast for 13 seasons from 1958 until 1972, and they were wildly popular. Ballet companies, operas, and concerts were filmed, theater productions were captured, plays were transformed into films. The Metropolitan Opera and the Berlin Philharmonic have been broadcasting live performance for a fee for years. Several platforms, including Medici and Adagio, have been presenting films, many archival films from the early days of this art form, for many years. Production platforms, strategies. For most of the 20th century, it would be safe to say that outside of community rituals and events, brass bands, dance bands, dinner music, and singing waiters, more people heard concert music on recorded platforms and diffusion on radio than heard the music live in halls. Towards the end of the 20th century, increasingly, pop music was investing in fully produced short music videos to lure people to buy the CD or to buy tickets to gigs on the tour. As the world was increasingly interconnected on Wi-Fi, some musicians started giving interactive classes and private lessons. Many scoffed that this denatured the pedagogical relationship. In the 21st century, in our still young millennium, performance is now readily available on full visual and even 3D platforms. The artistry of capturing live performance is as important as the work of a choreographer interpreting a composer, like George Balanchine with Bach's works, or Nijinsky creating L'après-midi d'un faune on the music of Claude Debussy. Video artists are now artistic partners in this field. We become painfully aware of this potential and its importance when we see a film in which the visual work does not serve the work being performed. The videographer for a soccer match is not necessarily the right person for a ballet performance or a jazz concert. The art of video editing is quite evolved, and the use of the techniques of overlapping, mirroring, merging images, or allowing multiple images on the screen simultaneously is something that can enhance the video as a work of art in itself. Colors and dynamics can be added, or if simplicity of a different sort of impact is preferred, draining color from the event or leaving only outlines of the form. I think of the amazing animation of live art developed by Norman McLaren at the National Film Board of Canada decades ago, particularly in his film Pas de deux, as a great example of the genius in the marriage of video and live art. If audio recording and then television was the way to bring live art from the stage and into the popular imagination in the 20th century, we now have the enormous potential of the digital pivot to consider. With global interconnectedness, the technology to make, share, and view the great works of our times and of all time, we now need to understand how to make this market work to the best for all involved. The techniques exist and will be perfected and surpassed. The interest of audiences will be stimulated as the brilliance of new work is made evident and is promoted through the dynamics of the internet, print medium, and the coffeehouse conversation. But as a community of users, we need to understand the best practices, the best platforms, the strategies going forward. If an artist is going on tour and their program exists in a fully produced video, should it be made available in the period before the tour or not? It may be good for the artist to monetize, but will it compromise the presenter's ability to sell tickets? Can a teaser made with the same material be a better tool for the artist and the tour presenters? If a venue wants to make a hybrid version of the concert, should the access be restricted, geolocalized, pay-per-view, by subscription? What impact will it have on the sales for the next performance in the next city, 2 hours away? And what if they also want to sell tickets to a hybrid version of their own live presentation? What is the value of venues participating in digital networking of live streams or presentations of produced films, local networks, international networks? So how do we, as agents and managers of live artists, need to navigate through this universe of opportunity with its obvious challenges, as well as the unpredictable nature of taste, markets, and technology? We need to start with new knowledge, new resources, new understanding of how this platform works. We need to think what role we can play in this new world. We need to understand how to make sure that all the partners in the enterprise of digital presentation are getting the most value for their engagement in the process. I have more questions than answers, and I look forward to yours. Thank you.